In today's tutorial, what we're going to be covering is how to style the elements we've created within the body section, just as a quick iteration: the header, the nav, the main, the article, and the footer. We're going to look at designing elements in this to give it more of a web page look, because as you can see, it currently does not really reflect what a website can be. So what we need to do is work on what's called the CSS, the cascading style sheets of the page. This allows us to add design elements into the parts of our web page. To do that, for those who aren't familiar with Dreamweaver Creative Cloud, it's now called the CSS Designer. So once you click here, what we're going to do is we're going to add a source for the CSS. So what we need to do is just simply click the plus icon here, and we're going to create a new CSS file. So it'll offer you where you want to browse it to. And if you look in our website, we created that images and CSS folder. We're going to store it in the CSS folder, and we will call it style. Easy enough. And after you do that, you can just press save. It creates the directory you need. Press OK. And now you can see you have the source of style.css. On the top up here in the index section of source code, you can see you have now an external file linked to this file. And in the code section, you can see where it's linked. Link href to your style page. So all aspects of Dreamweaver kind of show you where everything's linked. It just, you can see it in many different ways if you need to. So what we're going to do is modify the header section. So to do that, what we need to do first is add a selector. It's going to offer body header right off the get-go. We don't want that. That would basically mean this rule would apply for the body of the website and the header, which would make it really confusing looking. So to fix this, we can just empty it out and just type in header. You'll notice that it's already got it pre-put in there because it's an object that's native to Dreamweaver. Get that, press enter, and that is now associated with the header. So you can add properties for your CSS rules in a couple of different areas. I'll show you one firstly, which is right below here in the properties section. You can type in things like height. If you type height and you say you want it about 75 pixels, just type in 75 px, and now you'll notice if we click here, it's larger. Another way to modify the properties is you can see we are selected on header. In the properties section below here, we're on the targeted rule of it. You can select edit rule. This kind of gives you more of an expanded view of how you can customize things, and it's got it in a categorized manner. So you can see this one is particular for the font family, as well as the color of it. We will modify that later, but just my word of advice for that one is don't modify the font for individual objects. You modify the font for the whole website, meaning we're going to create a body rule after to do that. So if we wanted this color to, say, emulate what Conestoga College looks like with the black header and gray navigation, we could go background color black, press apply, and you can see now that this object has gone black. Now if we wanted to modify the nav now to emulate Conestoga with a gray navigational menu, we just make sure we have nav selected. And I'm just going to give us a little more real estate here to see what we're doing. We don't need media, we'll just expand selector. We're going to add a new rule again. We'll get rid of the body and just add nav, press enter. Now we want to make it a little bit larger for nav because it's currently the size of the text font, which is too small. So we can just do height again. Let's say 25 pixels. We could maybe even go a little bigger than that. So this is a good section to show you how you can remodify these objects. Just click back in, maybe 35. That looks a little nicer. And then again, if we just click nav inside of it, you can modify the contents too if you want to type in there, which we will eventually. We're going to put a table inside of it. For now though, we're just kind of doing some design formatting. We're going to go ahead and edit this rule now. So as we did with the previous, we're going to go to the background section, and we're going to give it a background color of, let's go with darker gray, just kind of like Conestoga College's. Press apply, and you can see now you have some contrast between the nav and the header. Now just to give you an idea of how it would look on a website, if you press F12, it's going to prompt you, do you want to save? Yes and yes. And if you just have a quick peek here, now you can see we're starting to get kind of the elements of what we need. And you can see it's nice and strapped together, so no matter what the size is, it'll always stay in place. Now you can see this by many websites. Most websites have this actually. There is kind of a visual image below the navigation. And again, the simplest example would be if you go to Conestoga College. You can see here, when I expand it out, we have logo with the header, navigational, and then an image in the main content, and then some article. So let's just, keep on par with this, and we'll modify the main section now to have just right now a placeholder because we don't have an image for it. So in the main section, we're going to add another rule. Call it just main. Press enter. We will change the height again to, let's say, 350 pixels. That's a pretty decent height. And again, in the properties section here, we can edit the main rule. We're just going to put a background color in there for now, just so we know we need to put an image there. I'm just going to go with, say, like a soft blue. Press apply. And we can go ahead and preview what we've done again. We're starting to get the simple layout of this page. Now we're going to use our first table here because it's pretty uncommon for a website to have text that goes from left to right 100%. So we're going to put a table inside here to kind of bound the text in a specific area. So you can go ahead and highlight that section because we're going to be replacing it. If you go to the insert section, we're going to insert a table. We're going to do 2 rows, one for the header, one for the content, by one column at 1,000 pixels. 99.9% of all browsers can accommodate 1,000 pixels. Anything before that's using a Stone Age computer. And press OK. You can see now we have our table here. By default, it'll always align left, which isn't what we're looking for. Many sites these days aren't aligned left, they are aligned center. So to align that, all we have to do is select center, and we'll just delete that text. And now you can see, although all of these elements are 100% width, this one is bound by this specific section. Now what we're going to do is put just, like a headline here. And some dummy text here. So Islam, Orlam, Oplam, just dummy stuff that's pretty standard for this kind of thing. I'm going to copy it now, paste it all up in there. Now, if you want to make a big page break, you press enter. If you wanted just to break one line, which we'll show after, you want to hold shift and enter. So just going to fill this up for some context here. And to show you what I was talking about for the line breaks, you can notice the headline here when we preview is going to be right flush in with the picture, which doesn't look particularly good. So we're just going to add a little break between it. So put your cursor just to the left, hold shift, press enter, and it just makes a smaller break. compared to if I pressed enter, you can see it's quite a large break. And then we'll do the same thing between the text and the footer. Now, headlines are typically larger than the content of the text. So to do that, we're going to highlight it, and we're going to right click, and we're going to wrap the tag. Now, I'm not going to put too much detail on this because we'll get into search engine optimization later, but your heading that's most important, you typically call the H1 tag. It's the first heading of your website. So we're going to type in H1 and press enter. And you can see now that text is larger, it stands out, and it has spacing adjusted to it to kind of give itself, that it's unique for that specific area, not just in line with the rest of text. And lastly would be the footer before we do a quick body change. And if you want the footer, you can use the footer. I have two kind of schools of thought for that. Sometimes you don't really need one, sometimes you do, but for today's case, I guess we will modify that footer. So what we're going to do now is we'll create a new selector. We will just call it footer, press enter. And what's pretty standard practice is you'll either make it the same color as your header or your navigation, like so. So we'll make the height of it, sometimes you'll have an expanded view, sometimes you won't. Let's do height of 100 pixels. And then we'll go in and press edit rule again here. And we'll give it a background color of something similar there. Now, say we notice that's not the right color. You can just click it, click the color you want, and it'll update. Just so happens it is the right one. And then you can see here we have our footer below, our page there, our information, and a pretty solid modern setup for our page. We're going to do one more rule before we start setting up the navigation, and that's going to be redefining the body element to give us a more clean default text. And if you haven't noticed, when we preview the page, there's this white outline around the whole thing. We want to get rid of that. It's not very common to have a white outline around your whole page. So we're going to create another rule, and this one's just for body. And we're first going to get rid of this white area, which is actually called the margin. So we're going to go to margin, 0, and it's gone. Just to preview what we've done, you can see everything is nice and in line now with the object in the browser. Now what we're going to do is we're going to select body for the targeted rule. We're going to edit the rule. Its currently default font is Times New Roman, which nobody uses ever. We're going to change it to something more soft. So there's many options you can go with, but we're just going to try, we can get Arial in here. Arial, Helvetica, Sans Serif. These are the pretty common ones. It's the one that starts with Gotham. Press apply. You can see that all the font now changes on every section. And we can preview. So we've got pretty much the fundamentals here now. We have our layout we have the sections for where we're going to put stuff, we have content placeholders, and we have our footer at the bottom. Our next lesson will cover on kind of filling these areas in, as well as hyperlinks, but this is it for today's tutorial.